You know, it's a hard job to be out here for an 8-hour shift by yourself, driving in circles, if you don't love what you do.
If you've ever traveled through Boston Logan Airport, chances are you never even noticed Jeff Turner and his crew. While planes are moving on and off runways every 45 seconds here, this team keeps their heads on a swivel.
It's a lot bigger environment than a lot of people realize.
For anything and everything with wings. This is Logan's wildlife management program.
Hello, Shannon. I'm excellent. You?
Every day, 2 members of the 5-person team are responsible for keeping a watchful eye on these 2,400 acres.
One of them takes a tour around the perimeter and the other one goes out and does a full runway inspection to make sure there's nothing on the interior of the airfield.
Large flocks or even solitary big birds can pose a hazard to planes.
We're not worried about the single small bird that might be flying around the airport. We're looking at the bigger picture.
And this is the only kind of job where harassment is part of the 9 to 5.
A couple of Brant geese up in the grass. If you could come by and harass them, please.
In a landscape attractive to waterfowl, starlings, and gulls, they can trap the birds or harass them with flare guns, pyrotechnics, and air cannons.
There it goes.
Even the way they cut the grass here is meant to be a deterrent, and it's effective. So far this year, the airport has logged 100 bird strikes, but only a few damaging aircraft, most going completely unnoticed by the pilot.
You know, I mean, we see coyotes and deer and all kinds of different birds on this airport, and the traveling public pretty much has no idea as they sit inside the comfort of the airplane to take off.
And so much of what we know about bird mitigation today is because of what happened on this runway more than 60 years ago.
The result was tragedy.
Chris Sweeney is a writer who penned most of his recently published book from his Somerville garage. His new book, The Feather Detective, begins with the deadly October 4th, 1960 crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 375, a plane that crashed into the harbor immediately after takeoff.
At the end of the runway, there were mutilated bird carcasses scattered all over. And as they got the engine and airplane remains out of the water and started looking at them, there was bits of feather and tissue in the engines. And so slowly it became evident, we think this crash was caused by birds. But in 1960, very few people were thinking birds would pose a threat to commercial airliners.
Enter Roxy Laybourne, the subject of his book, and an unusual older woman who spent much of her life managing the Smithsonian's enormous bird collection.
In terms of like ornithological excitement, it wasn't the most exciting job.
After the Boston crash, the FAA sent feathers from the engine to the Smithsonian to identify.
And they landed on the desk of the one and only Roxy Laybourne, who was tasked with confirming that these, it was speculated that there were European starlings. And she was tasked with kind of determining beyond a reasonable doubt that in fact European starlings were the species that caused this crash.
Using a microscope you'd find in a 10th grade biology class, Roxy developed a system to identify birds with microscopic features in their feathers. What followed Boston was an extraordinary career pioneering forensic ornithology to identify tens of thousands of feathers. That work led her from the halls of the Smithsonian to the military, the FBI, crime scenes, and courtrooms across the country.
These were all high-stake endeavors, and she never seemed to cave under the pressure. She always got the job done, and that's pretty inspiring in itself.
But Sweeney says Laybourne's biggest and largely overlooked contribution has been to the safety of our skies.
Roxy's science enabled us to understand what birds are being hit, where they're being hit, how much they weigh, and all of that informs, not just FAA safety standards, not just engine design, but also how airports manage bird population. And I'm super grateful that we have teams at airports, teams at the Smithsonian, teams at engine makers, all thinking very carefully about this problem.
They are kind of moving down between the parallels here.
While we can't eliminate birds completely, flying today is far safer than it was in 1960. And this crew doesn't want you to worry about taking flight, but rather to appreciate that there are eagle-eyed teams looking out for you every day.
It's nice to know that people are interested in what we are doing. This can be a thankless job at times. So to have people understand that there are people on airports doing these jobs and are thankful for us, it's nice. It's nice to have people understand that what we're doing out here.